Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of CGS Live VFX Special. My name's Daniel Hourigan, I'm the head of FX at CG Spectrum, and as I mentioned last week, today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I haven't been working on the explosion this week, I've actually been moving house, so I'm glad you like it, Michael. I've been moving house or renovating before I move in, so I've been a little bit busy. But today we have with us Michael, one of my students, ex-students. He's finished now, but we have a shot that needs a bit of work. It's sort of we've all been there where we have a shot that we just can't get right, and no matter what you do, just sort of fumble with it a little bit. Sometimes you can leave it, come back to it later, and you might have some ideas. But this is one we've been kind of working on for a while, and it's got some really interesting elements to it. But it needs some work. There's some issues with it, some lighting, compositional things. So that's what I'm going to take a look at today. And yeah, it should be fun. It's sort of this is kind of what we do at CG Spectrum with our students. Students are paired with a mentor, and each week you meet up to discuss the work that they've been doing, the shot that they might be working on, or the course content that they might be going through, and we just try to help out and guide students through that process. So this is kind of an example of one of those sort of Q&A sessions as well. Yes, a new place. I'm not there yet. This is the old place, but soon you will see me in a new environment. I've actually been building an office because the house is only 2-bedroom. So I've been building an office inside a shed in the backyard for starters. So that will be interesting. It has no windows, so it'll be very dark and ambient. Cool. All right. Well, let's have a look. So here's the shot. Background going to stay the same. I might keep the posters, maybe a lamp. I'm not sure. I'll have fun with it. It's the box that I've built. This office, this office that I've built. It is like a plywood box. So it's just blank timber walls. Looks a bit like a sauna. But yeah, got to keep the posters. No way. Zeppelin's here to stay. Yeah, I'll have fun decorating it. Should be good. Get some more posters, maybe. Wall of posters. I'm worried about the heat, though. It's quite hot in the shed, and we're coming into summer here, so I might have to get an air conditioner or some sort of extractor fan. Alrighty, so this is the shot that we have. Let's have a look at your last movie output, Michael. It's quite dark. It's a little bit hard to see, but and that's one of the things that I see as the biggest issue with this at the moment. And it probably doesn't play back very well for you, but if I pause it on the first shot, which is this kind of wide shot of the character down here, a tree, and a moonlight, and presumably there's those trees in the background too, but I can't see them here. Now the thing that I see as an issue here is that the character, it's a big expanse of darkness, so that in itself can be a problematic thing to deal with. It's sort of like, how do you you've got so much black, how do you make things stand out or work? You don't want to overlight things because they'll look out of place, but really we do need more illumination overall, I think, just so that we can actually see everything that we need to. And the two main things that are important here are the character. Number one important thing is to always show the character, and then the tree, which is the other important part of this shot, which is getting destroyed. So we want to kind of highlight those two things. And I think it would be nice to kind of have, a bit of a sense of the background here. So then we've got, you know, this magic sort of stuff. And so here's another shot of the character, and we can see her a bit more, and we've got this interactive lighting, which is nice. One thing that strikes me of this shot is that she kind of, I don't know if it's just sort of light coming over here, but, you know, we've got a lot of light on her shoulder, but the moon is kind of over here, so it's kind of a bit of an odd thing. It may be just more top down, that's why that's getting illuminated. But her face is very dark. So again, just, you know, way too dark. I kind of like this interactive lighting up the ground. So I think we can do some more stuff with that. Let's have a look a bit further. So I think this is looking good. I just think all of this lighting feels a bit flat. So I would just want to brighten that up a little bit. And then we've got this kind of effect here. Hey Tyson, how's it going? I'm good, thank you. How are you? So then we've got this effect here of the lightning hitting the tree. And here, again, we've got a little bit of interactive lighting, but here I think is a real opportunity to play that up. And again, because of the darkness, it's sort of, you know, this tree sort of sticks out a little bit too much. It doesn't really, it just sort of like is there in blackness. So I think overall we just need to lift everything a lot. And then, you know, again, we've got this cool kind of destruction of the tree with these glowing cracks and glowing pieces and little particles, which I think is cool. But again, you know, it just all feels very dark. So I think, you know, even though it's meant to be moonlit, I don't think that means that it has to be, you know, super dark. I think when you think about like a full moon kind of night, things are quite bright. You know, they can be pretty bright. You can see things pretty clearly. So I think we should really see the environment. I think we should probably see the background. And maybe the sky could be like a dark blue rather than black. So that's what we've got to work with. We've got a few cameras. I don't know how much I'll be able to get through today, but we'll see. We'll see. And we're working in Redshift as well, which I'll try my best. It's been a while since I've been working in Redshift. I usually stay in Mantra a lot of the time. There's a lot of passes here, so I might simplify this today, but we'll try and work it out. So one thing that I've done just before I started working so that the stream goes smoothly, but you know, this is a good idea to do anyways. Some of these effects are quite slow to calculate. The tree especially is very slow to fracture. So I cached everything to disk. So if I go inside, you know, things like the rigid body sim, you can see that I've got file caches in here. So we've got this one here, we've got file caches here, up here, after every fracture, after every really slow part of this network, I've cached it all to disk so that, you know, I don't accidentally click somewhere and it starts writing that out. Again, hey Rizwan, how's it going? So I've got caches everywhere, just so that, you know, I'm not having to re-cook everything every time. So you can see we've got these trees here, which are, you know, you just cannot see in the movie. So that's something that, you know, we could bring out. Now, compositionally, with these trees, they're all the same. So that, you know, you can see they're copied just one after the other. If we go and find them, it's a tree, it's been placed, and then it's just copied along like that. I think probably it would be better to create a little more variation there. So, you know, whether we use maybe a copy to points instead and vary the scale, something like that. Could also, I don't know if, yeah, adding rotation here kind of screws up the pivot, so it doesn't quite work. But what you could do instead is maybe take this tree. Now this tree is at world 0, so we'll leave it there instead of transforming it. And let's just put a grid down. And I'll put it where you kind of had your tree in the background. So let's have a look. What have you got here? There it is over there. So let's put a grid. Let's template that. I'm going to put a grid back here and just make it, you know, sort of roughly the same, but I'll give it a bit of depth as well, because, you know, a line like that, it feels like a bit of a, you know, a bit of a fence, and it's good to create like a bit more of a feeling of depth back here. So I think, you know, even something like this, we could create, you know, more of a sort of forest. Let's scatter some points on there. It doesn't have to be many, could just be 10 to start with. Turn off relax, so you get a sort of more random distribution. Relax will sort of, or maybe not with 10, might not do anything, but you can see with many more, relax kind of evens things out. It's good to have a bit more randomness, but with so few, perhaps relax doesn't really have much of an impact. Okay, so let's copy 2 points. Type. And we're not going to use the transform because that will create an offset. There we go. So we've got some trees copied on to those points. They're very small. These don't have any attributes on them. So this must be scaling up as well. Okay, so let's put a... Actually, let's do it with attributes. So we've got our little trees there, and then I'm just going to put a wrangle on here. And I'm going to say at pscale equals rand at ptnum. And then I'm just going to do times 10. And there we go. So that'll give me, turn off that template. That's just going to give me a random distribution of trees. Now I could also do I find this easier to just do in an attribute randomize node. If I do rot, which is a rotation, I can actually randomize the rotation of these trees. So it's a 4-dimensional vector, because it's like an orient type vector. Hey Audrey, how's it going? And you can see it rotates them all, you know, kind of in all sorts of different directions. But if I take all of these to 0 except the middle one, which is Y, so rotating around the Y axis, and then I can just have them rotated differently around the Y. So they're not going to tilt, they're just going to rotate around. I'm good, thank you. I'm very good. Yeah, this is, I don't know, did you model this tree, Michael? Or did you get it from somewhere? They are cool. Kind of stylized looking trees. So what am I going to do? I'm going to put this, actually, instead of timesing by 10, what I'll do here is fit this. So fit 0, 1. I'm going to fit that between... Absolutely not. Great. Okay. Well, that's good. Good work. Alright, so there we go. So now I can specify the range of the scale. Let's have a look through that. There you go. So we've got a bit of overlap here where we could just, you know, let's look through the camera. Just play with that. We could play with that total count, and that will just kind of give us different things. And that's kind of cool, you know, it's kind of cool looking forest. Or you could just play with the seed as well. Yeah, I mean, look, modeling, it just takes a little while to kind of practice, and, you know, it's just... But as an effects artist, it's, you know, you probably would never be modeling a tree, so that's okay. So there we go, I'm pretty happy with that, but I could always go in if there were trees that I didn't like. I could potentially turn on relax and, you know, try and get them to space out a little more. Or I could just go in and delete certain points as well, like, you know, if I didn't like these ones being really close together. Oh, actually, another thing you can do is put a fuse down and just up your fuse value to be really high. So probably looks like quite high. There we go. See how that one snapped together? And these ones. So those ones that are really close together, because they put trees basically on top of each other, where they're super close together. Look at those two there. if I fuse them together, it gets rid of that. So that's cool. And then, yeah, you could always just go in and manually select a point and delete it if you didn't like that tree. So that, you know, it just feels a little bit more organic. Whereas before you just had this very straight line, all exactly the same tree. These are all rotated differently, so you don't get that silhouette repeating. And you get random scale as well, so it gives a feeling of depth. Now, with a moonlit environment like that, at the moment what you have is like this, you know, huge amount of darkness. And it's really hard to deal with that, because if you illuminate more, you just see this plane that goes off into infinity. So with these types of environments, what I think really helps is like a mountain range, and that can be silhouetted dark, but then the sky itself can be like a dark blue. And then so you've got this dark blue, and then you've got dark mountains in the background. Now I would probably just do like a really simplistic mountain with a grid, and not model it really. I mean, yeah, I will model it, but it's not going to be 3D mountains. It's going to be kind of two-dimensional. And because these trees are kind of stylized, this will sort of play in with that. So let's go and make a 2D mountain range. So I'm changing the orientation so it's sort of facing the camera. And then I'm going to put this like this. Whoops. There we go. Stylized mountains. How about that? And you can see when I look at the wireframe, if I take my rows down, maybe, yeah, let's just do that. So 2 rows and then as many columns as you want to add detail. And then I'm just going to grab an edit node. And let's just have a look at this in right view. And then I'm just going to create, whoops. I'm just going to select these points now and create this kind of mountain range. So, you know, pull them down to create that kind of whatever you might want to do. So, you know, the more detail you put into this grid, obviously, the more detail you're going to get in your mountains. Do something like that. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to be super perfect. Now we could always put a subdivide potentially after that, and that will kind of smooth out some of that stuff. And then you could always, you know, add like an additional noise to that as well, or then afterwards put another edit in and just add additional little, you know, tweaks. You've always got the soft radius as well, so you can play with that, and that'll give you, this scale's pretty big, so you know, maybe we go 10, there we go. So you can see how that sort of, let's go 30, oops, 30. So you can see how that kind of makes much larger adjustments. So, you know, let's get it in the camera view, because that will yeah, make a difference as well. So let's have a look through the camera, and I'm gonna put this way back. So let's have a look at where it is. So it's in front of our trees at the moment. Ghost. Open a transform here. Just gonna. I don't have a centroid expression, so I'm gonna do $CX, $CY, $CZ. There we go. So just move that back behind the trees. And that's a bit small, so I'm just gonna scale it up to suit. Okay. Something like that. And I mean, we do have, the camera does move, so we have to be mindful that, you know, potentially going to, you know, see the edge of those mountains, so you'll need to kind of do that all the way around. if you want. But I think that, you know, it's about creating that feeling of depth within the environment. Even though, you know, these are just two-dimensional mountains, they'll kind of sit back there as a silhouette. So I'll set them to black. I might just put a reverse down so they're facing forwards. That one, the quick centroid expression. So what I would do in the transform is to put a transform down. Don't do anything else, because if you save this, it'll save all the translate information as well. Add your pivot expression in there. So $CX, $CY, and $CZ in there. And then hit save preset. I'm in 18 here. I usually work in 18.5, but I have Redshift attached to this version. So all my presets are in 18.5. But yeah, just save it, call it centroid or whatever you like, save preset. And then every time you put a transform down now, you'll have that. And you can do this for any node. And then choose centroid and it will just add that in. But yeah, you have to be careful. Don't do anything else when you're doing that. It's awesome. Saves a lot of time. All right, so there we go. Let me do a little facet on here. It looks like maybe I did some my edits pulled the mountain out of kind of square, which isn't ideal. Have a look at this. Yeah, it looks like I kind of did it on an angle, which is oh no, maybe it's okay. Edit, subdivide. Where's my... Yeah, weird. Did I rotate this or something? Oh, that's odd. Why would I do that? There we go. So now that it's back on the x-axis, oh, there we go. It looks like maybe it's okay now. That rotation was just screwing things up. There we go. That looks good. All right. Some weird stuff going on with the normals, but that's okay. So this, you know, can sit in there, and really it does need a little bit of work, but I think that will help a lot with, you know, your kind of, your background and your feeling of depth and just all that kind of stuff. And, you know, you could get models to put in there if you wanted to. You could download some models like Quixel rocks or something like that to chuck in there, and that, you know, potentially could work. All right. So, mountains. We've got some mountains in there. And potentially you could have foreground rocks as well to sort of tie into that. But now if I make my background color dark, so we've got that. Then we've got our mountains. We've got our bright moon. So, you know, we've got this guy here. There we go. I guess it doesn't want to display the bright color out here. I wonder why. It's weird. All right. So let's take a look at this and try and get it rendering. I'm going to just create a new Redshift node. So let's find out what objects we need. We've got extras. We've got ground. So go back to my mantra. Add, whoops, objects. Get rid of the star there. We'll do ground render. Hey, I'm good, Keegan. How are you? Thanks for joining me. So forced objects, ground render. I guess we can just pick them here. Ground render, extras, grid 1, and moon render. Let's try that, see what happens. Now I don't have a material on this one, I don't think, so let's just go to my material context and I'll create a new RS material for those, for the grid. So let's just call this BG Mountains. Set that to black. Turn the reflection off. Hey, that's good. I'm glad. So we'll apply that. /map/BG Mountains. Oops, wrong one. That should be for the grid. And let's call this BG Mountains Render. So we are consistent. There we go. Extras. This one probably did have a material on it, but let's just give it. I'm going to do a different one, a new one. So let's call this one BG trees, and this one maybe I'll just make slightly less dark. So I'm just going to give it a little grey shader. Oh, it looks like you do have a BG trees shader. Somewhere. Can't see it. Oh, unless I just accidentally did that. No, I did that. Mistake. Alright, so let's do that. There we go. Okay. Hit save and proceed to glory. Wow, takes a long time to save. Okay, open render view. It's giving me an error. Oh, look at this. Pointing to your local directory. That's all right. Okay, nothing. So let's check out our cameras. We got camera 1. What lights do we have here? Let's check out our lights. Oh, so many lights. All right. Forgive me, Michael, but I'm going to delete all of your lights. Simplify it. You know, let's try and make it simple, because yeah, having so many lights does just make it kind of hard to control. So we've got this moon here. I guess first things first, I'll just create a light from this direction. So I'll go up to my redshift tab, control click redshift light. No, my precious lights. And I'm going to call this one Moonlight. As another thing, they were all unlabeled, so you know it would take me a while to kind of try and figure all that out. So Moonlight. You don't have an environment light in here either, and I guess that's because you're going for that sort of moonlighting look. But I think an environment light, even just turned way down, could help. So we could take a look at that too. Now I probably just need to select the ROP. I'm just rendering the wrong thing here. So let's select, I guess it's that new one. Let's just call it new environment. There we go. Aha! There we go. Fabulous. Alright, so for the purposes of, getting the background in there, let's create a grid for the background so that we can see that color in our render. I mean, we could put a background image in there, but it's just sometimes easier to do this. So again, YZ plane. And I'm just going to try and move that all the way back. Oh, it's not going to do it. Here, super big background, or even a like a dome, would kind of work for this, like a sphere for the background. Let me give that a redshift material as well. So I'm going to call this sky BG. And I'm going to give this a dark blue. No reflection. Okie dokie, let's add it here. can do it. There we go. Alright, let's check out our alpha channel. Okay, so we've got a solid alpha. So it's in there, but it's not emissive, so it's not got light on it. So let's go back to our material here and go down to, oh, where is it? Overall emission. If I set that to white, emission weight 1, is that just going to give me a white background? Yep. Okay, so there's our white background. Interesting silhouettes happening. Let's take the color, see if we can just put that in the emission. Paste values. This stuff I find is, you know, it's a little, there we go. It's a little bit harder. Well, it's harder for me because I don't use Redshift all that often. I find this stuff is a bit quicker to do in Mantra, but you know, that's just me. All right, so there we go. We got this dark sky now, and the mountains actually, as black, maybe they should be a little bit, you know, of this kind of color as well. So perhaps we do this same sort of thing. Let's give them. I'm going to set that to blue. Let's set it to white. So I'll just make it the same. Paste. The render times. Yeah, look, I don't know. I mean, I really don't find it that bad most of the time. It's kind of, it is slow, but I really like the look and the ease of setting it up. Just, yeah, you know, that's just kind of something you need to deal with. Oh, I did it to the trees. At studios, you know, most studios that I've worked at anyway, use Mantra for effects. So I'm just kind of used to using it. And on a render farm, it doesn't matter as much. But when you're working at home, yeah, absolutely. It's you know, it's slow, but I still like it, so I just suck it up. Alright, so BG Mountains, there we go. So even this is interesting, you know, where I accidentally did the trees, but you can see, like, I'm not black. I'm not solid black on these environments. They've got a little bit of information on them, and that, you know, that is a good thing. You don't want to, like, if you can avoid it, you don't want to make it like completely black. And you can see, like, I'm sort of creating a feeling of depth with this stuff. Let me set the emission to 0, and then they should go black with a little bit of illumination. So, oh, there we go. Let's set that to black. So it kind of gives it the feeling of like an environmental fog. So there we go. It's quite dark. So let's look at brightening the sky a little bit. I don't know if you get this error in 18.5 with Redshift, but the color palette moves off. Alt space M in Windows, and then arrow down, and you can grab it off the top. It's super annoying. I think it does happen in 18.5. Let's make that sky a little brighter. Maybe desaturate a tiny bit. Oops, this one. Yeah, I hate that bug. It's so annoying. It's so annoying. Just slowly moves all the way off the screen. Okay. So that's a bit bright. But we could desaturate it a tiny bit as well. Not bad. Let's take the background mountains and just raise them up a touch. So you can see, like, yeah, it's always harder working on someone else's file, but you know, I spend a lot of time working on this stuff because it's really important. Drag the color palette window up from the bottom and let go. Oh, how do you mean? Oh, like here, like that. I'll try it next time. Yeah, you know, this stuff is really important, so it's worth spending the time on getting it right, you know? Because the background, even though, you know, even though it's not the main focus of the shot, it's still a big part of the scene, and it sets the tone for the, you know, for the shot. Yeah, so I think that's looking better, definitely. The trees, we could potentially, you know, give them a little bit of lightness to their texture or to their color, so that they take a little bit of that lighting information. But I feel like it's a bit weird, so I would kind of do that sparingly. So you can see as I take that value down, that will sort of drop that illumination there. Yeah, so even a little bit is kind of not too bad. The mountains could do with some work. You could actually use like a mountain image and trace it or something. Could be cool. But yeah, you can see having that depth in there does really, you know, give it a nice kind of feeling. Now, I think it would also be cool to have some clouds in this scene. So we'll, you know, potentially we'll look at that. But there we go. There's a good start. Now our ground actually is super dark. So let's take a look at that. You've got this ground render here. We've got render ground material. So let's take a look at your ground material. And you've got that in a material builder. Oh, and that's got textures. I see. Okay, so let's grab those. I have them here. If I put these into a texture folder, that should work. Okay. So that should, yep, text. Ah, forest. Okay. Another folder. Yeah, look, I mean, it possibly doesn't need textures. I just want to see what you kind of had for starters. So these are Quixel textures. Okay, so that should open in the correct spot. Yes. All right. Well, let's see if that makes any difference. Oh, it looks like you have a non-relative path here, so that may be the problem as well. Let's have a look. Well, that's made a different effect. Here we go. Let's have a look at this. Oh. Weird. It doesn't look like you have... Alright, let's make a new one. RS material. I'm just going to go with one of those. Let's call this ground. Now, you know, the ground really, it doesn't need... I'm just going to drag it on there. That should apply it. There we go. It potentially doesn't need a lot. It might benefit from having, you know, some displacement or, you know, some texture to it, but let's just try a new material. Set that to be quite dark. Okay. You can see the shadows there from the trees. Let's turn the reflection off. Wow. That distant light must be quite strong if it's illuminating that much. Set that to 10. You can see the lighting isn't really having any effect on our background, apart from the highlights on the trees, because it's all just emissive stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of good. I don't know why. Yeah, guess I'll just take this down. Oh, you know what? Let's just... sRGB. Yeah, I thought there might have been some kind of color correction on there, but it's not. Alright, I guess I'll just keep taking it down. Ground render. UV texture. What if I put a point color on here? I don't think that actually matters with redshift, but... Hey DF Simp, how's it going? So if I set that to black, it should be black. There we go. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Low value. Alright, that's getting better. New Houdini user. Okay, cool. Welcome. Anytime is a good time to start Houdini. Alright, that's kind of what I'm going for. Like, it's not... You can see that it's not super dark. I mean, it is dark, but it's not completely black, and that's the important thing there. So, you know, and you can sample by, like, holding control. You can sample those values and see what sort of values they are producing. And you can see they're not 100% black. You can see the trees here as 0. Trees are 0, 0. But this ground is at least getting some value. And that's good. Alright. I think, you know, the ground potentially could benefit from some textures and some, like, different reflections, things like that, but compositionally, you know, I think that is looking a bit better. The moon could potentially be slightly larger and also, you know, be a texture as well. Might help. Lots of moon textures out there, and that might help it just feel a bit more interesting. So let's get the character and start having a look at the character. Now, I would probably render the background as one, like that. You could split it up, you know, to make it better for comp. Maybe the moon I would render as a separate thing, and then all of the environment, because I can't really see myself tweaking that environment too much. Maybe just overall lifting it up a little bit. The background, I wouldn't render this background. I'm just using this as a visual guide. So I wouldn't render that background. I would do that color in Nuke. And, you know, we can have a look at that. So let's take the sky BG out. I wish I'd started 10 years ago. So much to learn. Yeah, look, you know, there is a lot to learn, but 10 years ago, Houdini was a different beast, and it's always changing and evolving, and actually now is like the best time to learn, because there's just so much content out there, and, you know, Houdini is much more usable than it used to be, so there's a lot to learn, but don't feel like you have to learn it all at once. It's just sort of you know, it's just one of those things that you chip away at bit by bit. So this is what I'm going to render. The background mountains, the trees, and the ground. And I'll render that to disk. Let's say render to disk, render current frame. Is the geo created in Houdini? The ground and the background is created in Houdini, and the trees have been placed in Houdini, but the tree was a downloaded model. All right. So I've got Nuke here, and I'm just going to bring these in as I populate. As I create them, I'm going to sort of populate this with these renders. So there's my background. And now I'm going to create a constant. Same resolution, so this is 1280 by 720. I might just reformat these up to 1920 by 1080. And then I'll make my constant color here 1920 by 1080. Merge. And it's going to be the background over the constant, because the constant is the background. You can see, there we go, there's my sky. So I can kind of play with that. And it might be handy to have the backgrounds as separate, so I could play with the background, the mountain color as well. But now here I can set this to be kind of blue, and then just play with that sky color. And then for saturation in here, I'll just put a color correct down and desaturate it if I wanted to, or you could make like little adjustments like that. And then, you know, we get the moon in there as well. The rendering, yeah, Michael, you're right. The rendering engine is Mantra, but I'm using the rendering plugin, Redshift. So, yeah, I think Brighter is better for this. It gives it that feeling of depth. So here I can also, you know, lift my environment, and you can see how that kind of messes with the feeling of depth as well. So you could kind of play with that. Maybe just, let's desaturate it a little bit. I don't know. Something like that. So let's now focus on the character. So I'm going to duplicate this redshift here, and I'm going to call this one new character. There we go. And I'm going to get rid of these. And let's see what we've got. We have wizard render. So let's look at her. There she's there. Very small. So, you know, possibly going to be very tricky to see her here, but let's have a look. New character. We've got camera 1. Open our render view again. Oh, I need to change my ROP to new character. And I've got some materials here, so I need to update my wizard materials. So I'll go and do that. So you got wizard material 1. I'm just going to rebuild this just for, you know, just for the sake of it. You can do this out here as well, you know, instead of, you know, material builder. That's probably cleaner to do, but you can always do it out here too. So RS texture, diffuse color. Let's go and grab that. There she is there. And is she there? There she is. Super dark. Let's see if I can expose that up. Doesn't look like Doesn't look like we're getting much. Set that to... Oh, I haven't applied that, so let's go new char. Ah, there she is. Okay, so that's cool. I mean, I'm heavily overexposed, but what I've got is a nice rim lighting on her, which is, you know, it's kind of what I want. That's what I want to see, because I've got this strong moon in there. So if I add, yeah, if I add all this stuff, really, oops, if I add all that stuff in there, and the moon, and the sky BG, why not? Work on it all together, because they all have to work together. So, you know, she's really well kind of illuminated now by that, and she doesn't get lost. She's nice and bright, but it's a little bit dark on this side. So probably, you know, what I might do is put in an environment light. So let's go RS dome, RS light dome, and then we'll grab a HDRI. There we go. I can't remember who, Keegan, you gave me that tip. There we go. Yeah, you can just grab it from the bottom. That's cool. I didn't know that. Okay, so these default HDRIs that come with Houdini don't work with Redshift because they're RAT format. And Redshift doesn't like that. So let's go and find just a regular HDRI. I don't know if I have any that are kind of suitable for this, but I'll just pick one and just see kind of what it looks like. It's going to be super bright, I think, but let's see. Okay, so you can see that actually hasn't affected the trees, which is cool, and that's probably because they're super dark, but it has really brightened up our character too much. So let's take the intensity multiplier down, and we want this to just fill in those dark shadows, but we don't want it to completely, you know, illuminate her too much. So I'm just going to take a little snapshot there and then turn it off and compare. So I always do this when I'm testing lighting and different kind of ideas. Take a couple of snapshots and then you can, you know, flick between them. And you can see, like, even though, I mean, it's really hard at this tiny scale, but you can see that even though, you know, this looks cool with that nice lighting, just a little bit of extra light, you know, even half that again, it just helps not to completely lose her in the darkness. And you could even tint this light with a little bit of blue, and that kind of starts to echo the color temperature of the scene. So you can see you can, you know, add that tint in there, even though this environment light doesn't have that blue. You can add it in, and then it starts to kind of work a little bit better. So I think that's working a little bit better. You know, I can see her, I can see the scene that she's in. The ground looks flat, so we'll deal with that. But I think that looks pretty good for the character. Now let's try it from a different camera and see if it works. So that's always going to be the tricky thing, is like, does this effect, or does this lighting work from every camera angle? So let's go forward a bit more, maybe to here. Might be a good one to look at. So this is camera 2. Let's switch. Only use cameras 1 to 3. Okay, cool. Well, that makes sense. Okay, let's look at camera 2. Where are we? Yep. hopefully it doesn't all completely break. Aha! So there we go. Now we can see it a little better. And I think the material that I have on there is super shiny, so I'll turn the reflection off. Now I haven't plugged all the shader texture images in here, but you can see that on this shot, this lighting doesn't quite work. So this is where doing multiple shots in the one file can be a little bit tricky. But it just might mean that we have different lights for different shots and we call them directly in the node. So, you know, let's duplicate this one. This one can be new character shot 2. And so for this one, instead of doing candidate lights, I'll pick those 2 lights, Moonlight and Iris Dome. And then for this one, I'm going to create different lights. So I'll pick that new ROP. So that's going to be shot 2. There we go. And so there's no lights now. And then, so I'm going to call this Moonlight shot 1. Oops, shot 01. And inf light shot 01. And then I'm just going to duplicate these for shot 2. There we go. Handily it updated the numbers. And that should have updated. There we go. And this one now can be shot 2 lights. And this is easier, you know, and clearer than doing like takes or things like that. You know, I find that stuff really annoying when I open a file with takes because it's not immediately obvious. Whereas this is very clear that these lights are for shot 1 and these lights are for shot 2. So yeah, this is the way that I prefer it to work, just because it's very clear what's what. Okay, so let's render that again. We should have. There we go. So let's take our moonlight down. Getting better. It's pretty strong. And in fact, because of this shot, you know, we could always put a light specific for the character. And in fact, overall, we could put a light specific for the character. So, you know, we've got our moonlight up here. And if I just try and keep roughly the same angle and zoom in, I could put another RS light just here and have it be an area light. So this could be, you know, moonlight jar. And let's try that in there, and we'll get rid of the moonlight, the big one. We'll just try this custom one. Let's try that out. Character shot 2, just make sure I'm on the right one. Yep. Moonlight char. Okay, let's go to that. There we go. So the area light, it's a bit softer. And it's not as kind of intense as that distant light. So now I can kind of dial that up and down. There we go. It's kind of nice. Let's give it just a hint of blue as well. You know, everything is white by default, but it just, you know, that tends to make things feel a little flat and a little kind of, you know, lifeless, I guess, a little grey and you know, one-dimensional. And then our environment light we could bring up a little bit. Because this is like one of the hero kind of shots where it's all about the character. I don't know what's going on back here. There's a texture showing up. Oh, that's the environment light. So we need to get rid of that. Enable background. Alpha channel replace set to 0. Backplate. Oh wait. Alpha channel replace 0. Enable background. I usually just turn on backplate and leave it as nothing, and then it should just give me black. Okay. So yeah, this is our hero shot of the character. So we want to see her. We want to see her clearly. So, you know, brightening up that environment light a touch probably isn't such a bad idea. Still confused what is meant by hero object in our lessons. When we refer to hero object, it means that is the focus. That is the thing that's the most important thing in the scene. So, you know, if you're taking a photo with a camera and you've got depth of field and you're taking a photo of a person, for example, the person in that shot is the hero of the shot because they're the thing that is in focus. Everything else is kind of, you know, in the background and maybe blurry. You want to make sure that object or that person, whatever it is that you're taking a photo of, is, you know, clear, well lit, you know, all that kind of stuff. So by hero, you know, I guess it's like a literary term. You know, you're talking about the person or the object that is the most important part of the scene. Does that make sense? So, you know, when you're dealing with characters, the character is always the hero. You never want to lose sight of the character or make the character too dark because, you know, the character is what the shot's all about. So we put a lot of work into making sure that the character never gets lost. You can see we're losing a bit of the side of her face here, but when we get the magic in, maybe we can make that better with a bit of illumination, you know, casting upwards. We could always increase the environment light. It may also be the rotation of the environment light that could sort of give us a different lighting direction. Because, you know, there we go. So HDRIs are 360, but often they have a sun in them that is coming from a particular direction. So if you rotate it, you can kind of maybe tweak that. So let's now turn it down a little bit, because now we've got more of her face. Let's turn it down. Let's see how that looks. And again, you know, tinting that to suit the scene, giving it that blue kind of hue. And the moonlight as well. So the other thing that we could do here is, you know, on this really dark side, we've got this strong key light, we've got a fill light from our environment, but another light in the sort of traditional 3-point lighting setup that we tend to do in 3D is what would be described as a rim light to highlight this edge that is in darkness. So we'd come behind the character here, this, so our camera's kind of there, I think. We come behind her like that and control click another RS light. Look through the camera. So let's call this rim light. Char. And it's called a rim light because it's lighting the sort of the rim, the edge of the character. It's called edge light if you like. Okay, so let's crank the exposure on that and pull it in to our character. Oops, I always do that. Render view. So I'll take a snapshot of that. And there it is there, you can see it's visible. But you can see what it has added. Let me reframe that, there we go. What it adds is this illumination to this edge, and you can see how it picks out that edge and makes it just pop a little bit. So I think that adds a lot. Now let's just tweak it a little bit. Let's make it a spotlight. There There we go. Let's just widen that up a little bit. And we've got cone angle, so I'll just crank that. So we get a good spread of that spotlight cone. You can see it just picks out that detail, and that, you know, actually looks really cool. Now with that, you can give it a nice kind of a different color maybe. I mean, we could try blue. You can see that just gives it a kind of cool feeling. Or you could try a completely, you know, different contrasting color. And that can be quite cool. But I think maybe that's a little bit too away from the color palette that we're going. So maybe we'll try blue. Okay. So I think that's kind of cool. Let's go back to our material and bring in the rest of these textures. So what have we got? We've got normals, we've got specular, so just these ones here. So normals, specular, and I think that's all we have. So let's just plug in the normals. Hi. I can't say your name, but how would I pronounce your name? Because it's written in Korean, I think. I can't read it. So normals, I'll have to go and check your material, Michael, because I've forgotten how to do this with normals. It's in a bump map, that's the one. I can probably just copy all this. I guess this is why it's good to do it in a wrapped up version, because it means that you can have all that sort of in one. So let's try RS material, redshift material. Bama, okay. Hi Bama. Thanks for telling me. Bump map, yeah. RS bump map. And then we'll grab a texture. Is it a texture sampler, or did you use something different for that? Yeah, texture sampler, okay. And then plug that into input. Grab the normals. Object space normal, tangent space. See what happens. Did that do anything? Doesn't look like it. Oh, you know what? We need to apply the redshift material now. So I'll just call this character shader, and then new char. It's this one. So let's go and find that. Hey, there we go. Now we can see those normals, and that helps with the shading as well. You know, it sort of makes it a bit less flat. Adds a little bit of detail, which is good. We could add that specular in there as well. So you could add that to like reflection weight. Take that specular map, add that to reflection weight. And you got reflection color there. You can play with the roughness. Let's see what that does. A little bit hard to tell. Let's take a snapshot. Turn it off. Do another one. Oh yeah, there you go. You can see a little bit of shine there. Very small amount. You could always do this as well, where you just add, RS add. That's the most annoying part about Redshift, is that you have to do all these RS nodes. So RS color constant. Oh, I guess it's a RS. Oh, actually that'll be fine, because it just converts it into a float anyway. You could add a value here if you wanted to like have an overall specularity increase. So you could just add a constant, and then that will just overall make her a bit shinier. So like if I add 1 to that, it'll make her really reflective. There you go. You can see she's super shiny. But yeah, so that can be a way just to sort of tweak the overall reflectivity if you wanted to, then add a bit of roughness. So I'll just make that like 0.3. Can you do compositing in Houdini? Yes, you can. You can. There is a compositing kind of context, composite view. It'll take you to the image context. And it's okay, you know, it's okay for doing some stuff. I've done jobs in, you know, in that. And it's been fine, but you know, Nuke is certainly the kind of go-to compositing tool for, you know, for the VFX industry. But yeah, I mean, you can use it. It's not super full-featured or anything, but like it's okay. All right, so you know, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's looking quite nice. Now we could try and do, you know, some SSS on this character. If you had a look at the texture here, you could potentially take, like if I hit preview on this will open up in MPlay. So you could potentially take this. There we go. Take this map and produce like maybe an SSS mask from it. Why don't I show you? I'll open up Critter. And you know, you could also do this in Nuke, but because it's a still image, you know, I'll do it in Critter. So where are we? Bring this one in. There we go. So the areas that I want to be, you know, the SSS are going to be the skin, any of the areas that are fingers. So let's just kind of click out around this stuff. Actually, you know what? I won't do that. What I'll do is create a new layer and just paint those areas. So I'll just paint them white. So I'm just going to do this very roughly. Let's see. Okay, drag my brush. So I'm just going to use this as a mask, essentially. It's going to be a very rough SSS mask. And I can just sort of broadly paint over those. And of course, you know, if you use Photoshop or whatever, you could do it in this, but you could do this in Nuke as well with Roto Shapes or Roto Paint. I'm just gonna paint over all those bits that, you know, look like they're meant to be skin. Hopefully I get them all. You know, so if you don't have a map, you do have a map, and it tells you, like, informs you where the UVs are for particular parts. So I can sort of identify the areas that are skin here, and, you know, create my own map if I want to. I could also paint this directly on the body and use a attribute to define that as well. But you know, there's so many ways to do it. This would be the more traditional way of doing it, and you would hope that you would get maybe an SSS with a character like this, but we don't have one, so we'll just create one. I think this is skin. I don't know. It's weird that she has like a little light switch on her leg, if that's what that is. Alright. It doesn't matter too much, but there we go. Is that her eye? It's weird. So we'll turn that off. We'll create another layer, and here I'll just fill this layer with black. So now I've got a black and white mask. And I could always potentially do something like this where I maybe multiply that over. That could be interesting. Or you can play around with, you know, some of these kind of passes to see what sort of weird stuff you could get. Saturation, let's see what that does. Multiply might be what we want. And you could always kind of take that down or something. Might be interesting. You could always also colorize it. But I'm just going to use it as a black and white mask for now. So I'm just going to save this. I'm going to call it Hourigan SSS. Yeah. Okay. Close that. So now, here's our subsurface. So we've got two places for subsurface here. We've got subsurface multiple scattering, and we've also got our subsurface here, and we've got absorption scale and scatter scale. So let's just try working this out first without bringing in our mask. So turn my render back on, take a snapshot, and I'll set my scatter scale to 1. Nice. All right, so we'll take that down until we get a kind of decent amount of scattering in her skin. And the color as well, you know, we could, I don't know, change it. Ghost Ninja, that's right. Oh, look at that. That's kind of cool. I love SSS. You can get some really cool, crazy looks with it. Alright, so let's take that down a little bit. I find with SSS, it just gives the skin that feeling, you know, it absorbs a little bit of light, it transmits a little bit of light, and it makes the skin feel a little bit softer and just not quite as flat. Like it just brightens everything up a little bit, and you can see, like, you know, it just gives a little bit of life to it. So the problem is though that it's giving life to the boots as well. So we don't want that. So we've got this absorption scale. So if I set that to 0, hopefully that will just not do any scattering. Oh no, it is still. Okay, so we'll have to set the scatter scale by this value. So let's bring in our texture. Got our SSS. There it is there. And we've got our absorption scale, scatter scale, sorry. So SSS amount. And if I plug in an RS, let's put an RS change range down. Plug that into SSS amount. And that should now have grayed out that. There we go. And then I'm going to plug this texture into the input of my fit, essentially. RS change range or math range is a fit in Houdini terms. So the old range is 0 to 1, it's black and white, but the new range will be this, you know, this value is the maximum, 0.01. So we'll go 0 to 0.01. Let's see what happens. There we go. No boots. And we can change this to see, you know, how that is affecting it. Voila. So, cool. You know, we just created a mask. Got a weirdo eyeball here, but we'll just, you know, take that down. So yeah, you know, and you could paint veins into that map. You could go crazy with the SSS if you really wanted to. But, you know, we just want to use it to add a little bit little bit of something. A little bit of life. A little bit of transparent shoulder. Turn it down. It's a bit too strong. And we got that rim light on there as well. And that, you know, that all helps. Her leg, you know, here looks a lot better, I think. Just having that little bit of illumination on the backside, that just really kind of makes it feel a bit more realistic. Okay, cool. Let's see this bump map, if we can do anything with this. Can I crank it up? I don't know if that really did anything. Yeah, maybe made it just slightly more intense, but I don't know. I'll leave it. So, you know, you can see it just, she's looking a lot better because she's a lot more illuminated, but the lighting doesn't feel, you know, it's not like she's in daylight. It's like there is this bright kind of, this bright moonlight. And again, we could make that moonlight slightly more blue just to give it more of that feeling. But by creating a custom one specific for the character, it really helps kind of to focus. Now we could go back to camera 1 and see what that same kind of lighting environment works. So let's switch that to camera 1. And we'll see if this same kind of lighting setup, works with camera 1 as well. Because it's a custom one now, it might work fine for the whole sequence. Yeah, there you go. I mean, arguably this shot is very, like, it's possibly too wide because it's kind of hard to see her. But by brightening her up, it does make her, you know, feel a little bit better. Okay, so I think that's working well for the character in general. So perhaps we don't need to do the per shot lighting. We just have a character light. So we have our environment light char like that. And we don't need an environment light specific for the shots. So I'll just get rid of that. But the moonlight, you know, potentially. Oh, actually, you know what? The moonlight as well. Oh, I see. Okay, so probably what we should do with the moonlight is exclude the character from the moonlight, so if I turn off, let's see, go back to my mantra, my redshift, go to objects. So yeah, we're not even pulling in the moonlight into here. So that's actually fine. We don't need to do any mesh associations or anything. We do have this light being visible, so let's get rid of that. That's the character light, and we're probably the spotlight as well. We should hide. So we'll just select both of those and make them invisible. Where is that? Ray contribution. There it is, under the area section, visible. And it looks like the spotlight doesn't have that, so the spotlight's fine. So just the area lights. And that should then go away. Alright, cool. SSS may be a little strong, you know, she's a little bit transparent, but that's okay. So, let's bring her into Nuke as well. So we'll get rid of all of that. Probably I'll keep the ground in the matte slot. And the reason for that is that it is contributing to the lighting. It's stopping the HDRI, which is a 360-degree image. It's stopping that from shooting light from underneath onto her, which we don't really want. We want it to feel like she's connected to the ground. So I'll leave that in as the matte, and I will render that out. And it probably doesn't matter that it's a different frame. Let's just double check. There we go. Check the alpha. Ground is in the alpha. So matte palms from, we have already in here a null. which has on the redshift settings matte enable and the alpha set to 0. So if we apply that matte palms null here, matte palms from, matte palms, then we get that going away. There we go. Cool. So I'll render that to disk. Even though this is shot 2, we can use it as shot 1 as well. Alright, so here's... Get rid of that. Here's Nuke. Let's pull in our character. Reformat. There we go. A little bit brighter. So you can see, you know, she's a little bit lost there, and probably, you know, I've played with these colors a little bit. Let's just brighten her up with a grade. And you can see, you know, visually, when I have her being quite dark, looking at that, nothing is standing out. All that I'm seeing is this big expanse of blue. And there's no moon either to catch my eye, but this should be the focus of our shot, and she's not at the moment, visually. So I'm going to brighten her up. And I can play with, you know, contrast, so gamma down, gain and multiply up to crush her a little bit in terms of contrast. And then you can see, you know, if my eyes are scanning that shot, they get attracted to that really bright section. And you could always pull down the environment a little bit to make that contrast even greater. But that's what you need to keep in mind when when you're working on this stuff. Is my character visible? You know, is there something in my scene that is drawing the eye? If it's just all the same luminosity, the eye doesn't know where to go, and you just kind of, you glaze over and you're like, oh, it's all very dark and I can't see what's going on. But, you know, as soon as you look at this, you can see that the brightest part is the character, so your eye kind of gets drawn to it. So it's always important to consider that. Now, we need that moon in there as well, so we should pull that in. It's a separate render. You could always do that in Nuke as well. Add the moon in as a texture. I don't know if I have a moon texture here. Let's see. See if I can find one. Moon. Maybe not. Check my giant downloads folder. Nope. Let's try and find a moon image. Okay, so let's just do this in here, just to kind of see, you know, what we've got. So there's a nice big moon. And we can sort of play with the composition of this in here as well. So if I merge this over, okay, transform, and I can kind of, I can get rid of this. Well, it doesn't actually have an alpha channel, so I'll probably just plus it or multiply it over plus. And then the background, black background will go away. But now I can sort of play with composition, and in fact I could put this behind everything. I could put it behind the mountain, for example. So A over B, I'll need to reformat this so it doesn't do that. So let's try and do this again. Transform down. Oh, it's plussing, so I need to do over, really. There we go. And now I can sort of play with that, you know, scale to play with my composition. Black background's kind of screwing things up, but that's okay. So, you know, you can kind of play with that. And it looks better as a texture. Like it, you know, you can make it much brighter so that it doesn't kind of, you know, you can't see a lot of that texture, but just having that extra kind of detail does sort of help. And I know you've tried to create that, Michael, with you know, with the noise, but I think, yeah, just, you know, just having a little bit of extra detail, even like, you know, using it to silhouette the tree. So there's our mountains there. You know, using it to silhouette the tree, so you could go like super big on it if you wanted to. Now it's probably taking away from the character a little bit, so you do need to watch that. And then a lot of glows on this. Take that saturation down. And you can see how I can sort of create, so maybe I'll do it over the top of the mountains. I don't know, it's kind of nice with it behind the trees, but yeah, you can kind of create that, you know, that nice feeling of atmosphere as well. I don't know, I think it was better here actually, behind the trees. Kind of looks good. Maybe it'd be better if the trees and the mountains were sort of separate, so you could create that in between feeling. Might be kind of cool. So you could do like a really broad one, and then another one, which is much closer. And you can sort of create that, and even a third one, which is even tighter. You know, to create those kind of layers of glow that gives it that sort of lens flare-y type look. And that feeling of fog and depth. So, and again, you know, we get our character in there. So now, visually, there is something there to kind of draw my eye. I'm not looking at this expanse of, you know, kind of darkness. There's this bright moon. But then hopefully the motion of the character also will draw my eye. But, you know, maybe she does just need to be kind of cranked up a little bit to really sort of catch your eye. Maybe the moon is, you know, just a little bit too bright as well. Pull that down a touch. And you can see, like, your eye's kind of drawn to these two locations now, and you sort of, you're not really sure where to look, but you could use the camera angle maybe to help that. So maybe instead of this first shot being a static camera, you could, you know, let's have a look at that. I guess it's pretty quick. So you do jump in fairly quick into that. So maybe that's fine. But you can see, like, even within this dark one, the motion does attract your eye because that's just natural. You are attracted to the motion. I think probably, you know, you could ideally push in a little closer to the character or reframe it so that it sort of, you know, she was a little bit more in frame. Let me turn this on. So this is our tree. And let me try reframing this a little bit. So save. That's going to kind of screw up. It's going to kind of screw up everything, but you know, maybe just, it's hard, I guess, because of the scale. can also play with, you know, focal length and aperture. Get a more kind of exaggerated focal length so that you can sort of, you know, accentuate that feeling of depth. Get a bit closer to the foreground but make the background feel further away or something like that. I don't know. The whole idea with this shot is to kind of establish the scene, set the scene. But I feel like, yeah, the character being so small, it's sort of, it's a little bit hard to, you know, it's a little bit hard to make it work. So I feel like, yeah, I feel like just trying to reframe it a little bit. But yeah, like some of these camera angles can be a bit wacky when you take the focal length right down, but it's a cool kind of, you know, it's a cool kind of thing to play with sometimes, because you can get that really exaggerated, and you can see how it's pushed those trees and the moon in the background way into the distance, so it can really accentuate that feeling of depth. So that, you know, that could be something that could be cool to sort of play with. You would need to, I mean, this is kind of messed up the framing of everything with the background, but yeah, I think, you know, something like that where the character's more pronounced and more in the foreground might help. We can take a look at that. Let's see. And we haven't even talked about the effects yet, but really, it's all the same kind of stuff. You know, it's just about trying to focus on improving the focus and the lighting to, you know, to better show off the stuff that you've got. So let's have a look at this alpha. So yeah, so we can't, you know, our environment now has completely changed. So our mountains and everything, it's all kind of out of whack. But let's try and fix that for this camera angle. Close that. Maybe I can just scale this up. Rotate. Oops. Oh, on mouse up. That's why it's not updating. There we go. So yeah, I mean, probably I just need more of these mountains as well, but let's just try something like that instead. And then we could bring our tree now. I don't really know why you have inside and outside trees here. They're the same, aren't they? Should I render one over the other, Michael? I'm going to turn off this for now. Let's add that in to our new environment as well. This has got candlelight lights on, so I'm going to just pick... oh, it's so much easier to do that. I'm going to pick Moonlight, shot 1. That's actually all I need for the environment. Inside piece is a different color. Oh, okay. Well, you should be able to do that with material nodes. Which I think you do have, but yeah. Alright, so there's our hero tree in there as well, and it's kind of, you know, like, yeah, right. So the tree, you know, really this should be done in a separate render as well, but I just wanted to kind of see it in there. And you can see it's completely dark. And so again, this is another hero element of the scene. So let's focus, you know, let's focus on that. So we've got this RBD outside render. So I'm just going to clone this and call this one new tree objects. I'll just put the tree in there, and under matte I'll put the ground render, and then matte palms from matte palms. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff in here that probably you don't necessarily need. Okay, so again, lights. Let's focus on the tree, and we could try the character area light, but it possibly isn't really framed for that. So let's go and create one just for the tree. Oh no, forgot to unlock my camera. Okay, here we go. So again, from the kind of moon direction, let's click out an RS light, and we can probably use the same environment light. So I'm going to call this one tree moon light. And I think this one has shaders in it. So yeah, it's got shot material path. So I'm just going to delete the shaders that are on it because they have textures. And I'm just going to give it a simple material for the purposes of testing. So that's gone. It also has emission attribute, so I might just get rid of that for now. And I'll just give it a simple tree material. Not reflective, just make it a bit darker. Okay. So tree moonlight. Let's take our environment light. We'll call this one environment light tree. Should probably put that at the end. Moonlight tree, environment light tree. Now you can do a cool thing in here where you wildcard based on a name. So I'm just going to do star tree star, and then that will grab any lights that have tree in them. So let's have a look at that from camera 1. New tree, camera 1. Open render view. New tree. Wait for it. Looks like it's frozen. I don't know if that's rendered or not. Let's have a look. Oh, there we go. There it is. Okay, so let's go and change some things. So we've got moonlight tree. Let's crank that. So what do we have on our moonlight char? We had exposure of 9 and we had this kind of blue color. So let's copy that. Just make it the same. Paste values, exposure 9. Let's go light type. Let's try a spotlight on that. It's a lot of objects. It's very fractured, so I think it takes a bit longer to calculate for this one. Yeah, so the look of the spotlight is a little bit different to the area light. It's a little bit less soft. Let's crank the exposure just to see. You know, usually if I don't see much, I'll just crank it really high and then obviously that'll be too much, but then I can kind of bring my values, you know, back in. There we go. Okay, so at least we're getting something. Let's change it to area and see what that looks like. Still super bright. Let's go down to 20. Okay, that's not bad. It's very kind of like a rim light, but it's directly behind the moon really, so that's kind of to be expected. Now area, if you increase the area size, it should sort of spread the light out a little more. Let's see what sort of effect it has. Seems to have made it actually more intense. Let's take a snapshot and revert back to 1. So, like when I'm lighting effects and when I'm lighting stuff like this is my day, you know, I spend a lot of time just taking snapshots, comparing, and trying to determine, you know, what is going to be the best result. So you can see this was the larger area one. You can see it's a bit bigger in that render there. And it has spread the light out. It's obviously made it more intense as well, but let's make it like really big and take the exposure down at the same time. And we should make it invisible as well, but let's see what this does. So it's sort of softened that lighting out and it's spread it a long way. So it's filled in that area. So it's kind of, yeah, it's softened it out a lot, which is great. And you can make it even bigger. So, you know, see what happens. Let's make it invisible. And we'll make it 150 by 150 by 150. Because our scene's quite big, maybe we need to go bigger. Yeah, so yeah, you know, this is what I do, and I might spend an entire day doing this, but it's worth it, you know. It's worth spending the time getting your lighting right and doing it differently for the different components. If it's not, you can't get it one for all working. Quite often, you know, it's hard to do that, especially when you have a lot going on in your scene and they're far away from each other, and yeah, all sorts of reasons why it's difficult. You could have the simplest kind of effect in the world, but it can look terrible with bad lighting. So, you know, whether it's a complex shot or whether it's a simple shot, the lighting and the presentation of it is the, you know, the thing that's gonna catch you at the end. It's gonna let you down. You could spend all this, you know, time and make this really beautiful effect and then present it poorly and it's gonna look bad. So it's worth spending time, you know, doing this sort of stuff. Okay, so I'm happy with that moonlight look. Now let's increase the multiplier for the environment light. Give that a little bit more intensity. Okay. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. And of course we can adjust this in Nuke as well. So this is our new camera one. So let's go, we'll render this one to disk. So this can be new tree, what do they call it? What do they call those other ones? Shot 1. Let's call this one shot 1. Let's render that to disk. Should not take very long at all. And so we're running out of time, so I'm not going to get to the ooh. Oh my god. Well, that crashed. Let's go back, open, hopefully produced a crash file. I have been saving, but I feel like that didn't produce a crash file. That's weird. Let's have a look. So yeah, I won't get a chance to do the effects today, but maybe we can do that next week. Let's Let's just check our temp folder. No. Okay. So we probably lost a little bit there. Oh, Houdini. Killing me. Yeah, I mean, that's why you should save often. Or don't click things when they, when something's happening. How do you think about building generator to create city? Yeah, I mean, I think that's a cool thing to do in Houdini. Houdini is really powerful for doing that kind of procedural creation. We could take a look at that in a later stream. Certainly, it's kind of it's hard to talk about without actually doing it. But yeah, we could look at that. But Houdini is perfectly suited to doing stuff like that. So yeah, it looks like I just lost all that kind of stuff that I did. But hopefully we have that render. Maybe we'll have got that. Where are we? Whoops, too far. Did it get the tree? Oh, maybe. Let's have a look. It did. It's a different camera angle, but if we merge that in, it's probably not going to sit properly. To reformat it. So it's definitely not sitting properly, but I can move it down in here just for sort of kicks. So there we go. You can sort of see that's kind of roughly how it was meant to be. Where's my character? Oh, unhooked it accidentally. Yeah, no, that's all right, Michael. I'm happy to do it, and yeah, I'm curious to keep going on it, just to see what I can do with the effects. But I think the effects are fine. It's more the environment and the lighting of the rest of the thing that's the problem. And I think the ground certainly could do with a little bit of work. But you can see now, we've got a lot more vision on what's going on. She probably is a little bit too bright in there. And I think, the change of the camera angle probably will help, with just sort of trying to set that scene a little better. Even, adding like a kind of aura or a glow to her could be an interesting sort of thing to help, just to help pick her out of the darkness. I don't know. Might look a bit weird. Just a blue-green glow or something. Or if there was some like bright magic in her hands at this point, might kind of help. You can see like, don't want to go too crazy with the glows, but even something like that just adds a little bit of luminance to that area. And yeah, so what I'll do is render out an entire, or maybe the two shots, or a still from each shot, and then next week we can look at the effects. But yeah, you can see like it does take a little bit of time, but it's only been 2 hours roughly, and that in the scheme of things is not a long time, given how long you spend working on shots. Not you, Michael, but just people in general, me included. Spending 2 hours focusing on the lighting and lighting pieces individually, like it's really worth it. It's worth putting the time in and investigating, how you can make your shot better. But yeah, also, down to composition in terms of you've got those trees in the background and just making them feel a bit more organic, adding variation to that. And then experimenting with the camera angles, trying to get, a more dynamic kind of look, and also thinking about the focus. So yeah, I mean, watch reference as well. Look at movies and watch how they treat their characters and see how, you know, shots are composed with hero characters doing magic or doing an effect or, you know, whatever. The camera is often quite tight on the character. I don't know about wide shots. You know, I have to look at some movies and see how you know they treat wide shots. But often they're intercut with close-up shots, and that is what you're doing. So that's important too. Like, I wouldn't just do a shot, and you know, Michael and I have talked about this in the past, which is why he has multiple shots in here. But I wouldn't just do one shot from this camera angle and show the whole effect, because it's a bit boring, you know. It's not particularly cinematic. So by cutting closer, so you start with a wide establishing shot, and then you cut closer to this kind of shot of her doing a magic, and that's a really good opportunity to focus on the character and show her off. So that's great. And then, you know, then we've got, I think this is the same camera, is it? Or does it cut? Cuts to a different one at the end. So that's the same camera, and then it cuts to the sort of big destruction of the tree. But you can see like how our new lighting setup is going to help all of this. This is probably too bright and flat for me, so that would be something, you know, to look at, certainly. But, you know, you can see having nice rim lighting illuminating this tree now will just help everything, you know. And it means that you don't have to go so bright with everything else, because there'll just be more there to work with. So that's certainly something we can take a look at next week as well. But yeah, look, I think, you know, I think this is feeling a lot better. I think the ground certainly could do with some work, and I think with the ground you have this opportunity to create like a sort of like a muddy kind of environment with puddles, and the puddles reflect that moonlight. So I think that could be something to really look at. Thinking about the lighting that you have and just sort of seeing how you can make that work. Let's see what this new environment renders like. Let's see what we get. Oh, looking at that character. There we go. So, you know, if you had this kind of ground that was sort of patches of, you know, of shadow, of, puddles. So if I just create another ground here, just quickly, just to kind of give you something to go on. Where's our little grid? Let's hide all. There we go. Let's make like a big one here. No, not a simulation. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Just, yeah, like really just parts of the ground be reflective. Like, you know, what I'm thinking is just, not for any fracture, what do I want to evolve? Just to create, like, you could do it with a noise, or you could do it in the material just of the ground, but using a noise basically to define little patches of, you know, puddles. So, put a fit down to crush this, to create these little patches. So let's give this a lot of resolution. Oh, very low frequency to get that scale. So, you know, something like that. Let's look through our camera. There we go. So you got these kind of, you know, you got these kind of patches of puddles, right? Let's just blast that, and we'll just do it as a single object. At cd.x greater than 0 points, delete non-selected. So now we've got just these white sections, and I'll just put a color node down on that. And let's just give this, we'll just call this puddle. And I'll just raise it up slightly as well, so it's not intersecting that ground. Should hopefully make a little more should just sit on top of the ground, right? So this one, I'll just give it an RS material. Call this one puddle. And this is going to be black color and then just completely reflective. Slash mat slash puddle. I'll add that in there. Oops. And well, you can see it in there actually. It's reflecting blue. So if we turn on our settings here, go to our color controls. Whoa, look at that. So you can see what it's doing there. It's reflecting the blue of the mountains and the black of the sky, really. So perhaps, perhaps you just go in and give it a little emission, maybe. Maybe a little white. Let's see if that does anything. Oh, you know what? Emission weight. There we go. There you go. So, maybe render this as a completely separate pass. But it gives you that kind of... I guess we don't have the moon in there as well, so maybe that would help having that in there to really see that. But you can see how it helps with the depth feeling, because, you have this fall off of scale. But it just gives you that interest on the background, or on the ground, without doing too much. And I think there could be an opportunity there to catch some nice light rays and create some nice reflection. Need to spend a bit more time trying to work that out, but just like that. So you can see that little bit of reflection. The character could be reflected in one as well, and that could look quite nice. So even something like that is subtle, but it could look kind of cool. And then you could have rocks scattered around instead of grass, which is kind of hard to see, especially in a dark environment. You could have little rocks scattered around to create that variation and interest. So yeah, I definitely think the mountains, there's room for improvement there, but just the idea of adding something back there to create depth so that you're removing this vast darkness. I also think, adding clouds to that sky would be a really cool kind of thing to do. I'm just going to do this with a roto paint just to illustrate what I'm thinking. Just in this kind of area, like, little misty kind of clouds could be really cool. And maybe you don't see them so much over here, but you kind of see them illuminated by the moonlight. I think that could be really nice. Even low-lying, fog could be nice, but that might be a little bit harder to pull off. But something like that classic kind of cloud over the moon kind of look. I think that could be really kind of cool. If you Google moon clouds, like you'll get that kind of classic thing that you tend to see, and people do use it quite often in illustrations, so it's something that people recognize. But it could be an interesting thing to do, and you possibly could do it with a texture rather than trying to do it in 3D. Don't always think that you have to do everything as like a simulation or create some high-res volume. A texture might work perfectly well, or a cloud and moon image might work perfectly well. Try playing around with that first, because it can save you a whole lot of pain. But yeah, anyway, there you go. We're out of time. But hopefully that helped you, Michael, and hopefully it helped other people as well learn a little bit about my process. But it's sort of just about focusing and paying attention to what's important in your scene, and then really trying to make that stand out and pop. That's That's the goal. You know, that's the goal. I'm working through it step by step, taking each part and focusing on that, and then moving on. But yeah, well, thanks for joining me, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll be back next week. I think I'll still be in this room, but I may be in my new office by then. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week for some more fun games. We'll do a little bit more work on this, and then we'll move on to something else, something exciting. I don't know what. I have to look at my list. But yeah, thanks guys. Have a good week. Thanks for joining me. Thanks, Michael. See you later, guys.